My name is Claire, and I am 34 years old. Today, I am going to tell you how my husband changed the locks on the house I bought with my own money while I was at work, and then told the entire world that I had willingly abandoned him and our home. On that Tuesday evening in Chicago, standing at my front door, I had absolutely no idea that a terrifying and calculated plot had been hatched against me. Something I could not have imagined in my worst nightmares. I work as a senior project manager. My job is to untangle complex problems for large corporations, steer their plans in the right direction, and find solutions before trouble even hits. In my real life, too, I keep an exact accounting of everything. I know exactly how many days a task will take and what its true cost will be. But on that wretched evening, when I put my key into the lock I had personally bought from the hardware store, the key would not turn. It was raining heavily, and the sky was thick with dark clouds. That freezing Chicago wind was cutting right through my jacket and into my bones. With trembling hands, I tried again. I figured maybe the cold and rain had jammed the lock, or maybe I had not inserted the key properly. I tried twisting it a bit harder, but the lock was not jammed. It just was not my lock anymore. The entire lock had been completely replaced. In that moment, my first thought was that my husband, Mark, must have installed a new security system and simply forgot to tell me. God, I was so naive and stupid. When you trust someone more than your own life, your brain immediately starts searching for excuses to cover up their mistakes and their betrayals. Your mind simply refuses to accept the truth. Then I looked down. There on our porch, getting soaked by the cold rain, sat two large brown cardboard boxes. Written across them in thick black marker was my name, Claire. I did not even need to open those cardboard boxes to know what was inside. They were taped up in a messy, hurried way, like someone just wanted to erase every trace of me as quickly as possible. Deep down, I knew those boxes held my clothes, my books, my precious old photographs, and the everyday things I used. I did not make a scene. I did not pound my fists on the door. I did not even scream out my husband's name. I just stood right there, feeling that cold, biting wind against my face. In that moment, it felt like someone had ruthlessly knocked all the air out of my lungs, and I could not breathe at all. I turned around slowly and got back into my car. I cranked up the heater immediately because my hands were shaking violently. The shaking was not just from the cold outside. It was from that strange, terrifying silence you feel right before a massive hurricane hits. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and looked at the screen. No messages, no missed calls, no explanation or excuse as to why my belongings were sitting outside in the rain. Almost automatically, I opened my social media account, and the very first post I saw killed whatever was left of my trust forever. It was a post from Mark. He had uploaded an old, smiling picture of us from a vacation last year, and beneath it was a long, incredibly emotional message. He wrote that it was with a heavy heart and deep sadness that he was announcing Claire had decided to leave our home to focus more on her career. He said she had always been highly ambitious, and he respected her difficult decision. "We are on different paths in life now," he wrote, "but I will always wish her success and happiness. Please respect our privacy during this difficult time." I went completely numb. The sympathetic comments were already pouring in under that post. Mark's aunt had written, "Oh my God, Mark, you are such a strong person. Everything will be all right soon." His old college buddies were telling him to stay strong. Some people even had the nerve to write that Claire always loved her work and money more than her family, and that this was bound to happen eventually. I sat silently in that car, staring blankly at the window of the house I had given 7 precious years of my life to. The living room light was on. Behind the light-colored curtains I could clearly see a shadow moving. It was Mark. He was probably peeking out, waiting to see what kind of a scene I would make outside. He probably wanted me to sob loudly, kick the door, scream curses, or call him frantically like a crazy person, just so he could show the world and the courts that I was mentally unstable. I started my car and drove away without honking once, without making a single sound. I did not cry because I knew crying would not settle the score. Crying was a luxury I absolutely could not afford at that fragile moment. If you want to understand the depth of this story, you have to understand the foundation of my 7-year relationship with Mark. Mark was always a man with big, unrealistic dreams. We first met in a small city coffee shop, and there was this strange magic in his words that could win anyone over. He was one of those guys who woke up every single morning with a brand new business idea. One day, he dreamed of building a new fitness app. The next day, it was opening a massive organic restaurant. But dreams are not free. Dreams come with a very heavy, real-world price tag, and for the past 7 long years, I was the only one paying for all of them. When we bought this house in this quiet Chicago suburb, Mark did not have a steady or decent job. His credit score was so wrecked that no bank would even give him a small personal loan. The entire $35,000 down payment came straight out of my bank account, money I had scraped together through years of hard work. The title of the house had only my name on it. The hefty $2,200 mortgage payment was automatically deducted from my account every single month. From the expensive roof repairs to the old lawnmower in the backyard, everything was bought with my blood, sweat, and tears. Mark always told me that one day he would make it big, and we would live a life of luxury where we would not have to worry about money at all. I completely believed his sweet words, because when you truly love someone, you consciously learn to ignore their flaws. I became his unbreakable safety net. I never, ever let him feel like he was completely dependent on me, because I deeply believe that a good partner is someone who stands by you in hard times and shares your burdens. I canceled several important vacations and sacrificed my own hobbies just so I could work more, earn more, and let Mark focus entirely on his dreams without any stress. But over the last few months, the atmosphere in our house had slowly started to change. He began hiding his phone from me, speaking in hushed tones, and hanging up the moment I walked into the room. Whenever I asked who he was talking to, he would reply very bluntly that he was talking to investors, and I would not understand business matters. I had noticed some very strange things in our joint bank account. Small amounts of money were being withdrawn without my knowledge. Sometimes $45, sometimes $112, sometimes $80. When I questioned him about it, he smoothly lied and said he was buying raw materials for a new project and had subscribed to some necessary online software. I did not ask too many questions at the time because I was buried under a massive deadline at work. My company was handling a huge project, and I was working 12 solid hours a day. I thought he completely understood my busy schedule and my absence, but I had no idea that he was taking advantage of that very busyness and my blind trust to orchestrate a terrifying plan to kick me out of my own life, out of my own home. That night, after getting soaked in the rain, I checked into a small, cheap, and obscure motel on the outskirts of the city. The room reeked horribly of dampness, stale cigarette smoke, and old carpet. I sat down on that incredibly stiff and uncomfortable bed and opened my laptop. I am a project manager. My brain operates on data, facts, and evidence far more than emotions. When a massive machine breaks down, you do not just sit there and get angry at it. You figure out exactly which part is failing and how to fix it. My 7-year relationship was that broken machine, and I had to find out exactly where and when the malfunction started. I meticulously started auditing every single one of Mark's accounts, where I already knew the passwords. He was always terribly lazy with technology and had mindlessly saved all his important passwords on my old laptop. I felt absolutely zero hesitation invading his privacy, because he was now playing a sick, deceitful game with me, and I needed to completely rewrite the rules of this game. I dug through all his cloud backups, reviewed old and new emails, and pulled up past bank statements. By 3 in the morning, my eyes were burning from staring at the screen, but the entire truth lay wide open in front of me like a book. And that truth was horrific. Mark was having an affair with a girl named Chloe, who was maybe 25 or 26, and worked a low-level job at a local art gallery. Chloe probably thought this luxurious house actually belonged to Mark, and that he was some big-shot businessman. I found a massive backup of their text messages spanning months. The two of them were making concrete plans to live in the house I bought, using my money. Chloe had even picked out new furniture and curtains online to redecorate our living room, the very living room I had just paid off last month. But the most heartbreaking thing I found was not a romantic text or a photo. It was a legal email Mark had sent to a very sly city lawyer. Reading that email made all the blood in my body run cold. In that email, Mark explicitly stated that Claire works too much, is always stressed, and if he could prove in court that I left the house of my own free will, without any pressure, and was abandoning my marital duties, he could easily claim half ownership of the house. That was exactly why he had so cunningly crafted that fake social media post, to prove to the world, to his relatives, and most importantly, to a judge, that he was a poor, victimized husband abandoned by his selfish, greedy wife. He wanted to paint me as a mentally unstable, heartless woman who only chased her career. He had reduced 7 precious years of my life, my day and night hustle, and my true love into a cheap, disgusting, and greedy scheme. He wanted me to cry loudly outside the house that day, to beg him, to plead on my knees, or to send some angry text or email that he could use as solid evidence against me in front of a judge. He wanted to weaponize my own vulnerable emotions against me, but he forgot one massive detail. He forgot how incredibly skilled I am at keeping receipts and organizing data. I play with numbers that never lie, and I trust pieces of paper that never change their story. I spent the next 5 days in absolute silence and absolute peace. I called my office and took a week of medical leave without giving any details. I did not send Mark a single text or call him once in those 5 days. He called me twice, probably just to see how broken I was or what my next move would be, but I completely ignored his calls. Silence is the greatest, sharpest weapon in the world, especially when your enemy is fully expecting you to scream in pain. I had a long conversation with a highly trusted lawyer. I made double copies of every essential file. I printed out every single major and minor bank transaction from the last 6 years, proving crystal clear that every single brick of that house was paid for by my sweat and blood. I pulled all the old property tax receipts, the expensive home insurance paperwork, and the exact proof of every single monthly mortgage payment. I even printed out the entire long chat record between Chloe and Mark, where they discussed stealing my home. I compiled an incredibly thick, solid blue file. That blue file was not just paper. It was the absolute truth of my last 7 years. It was the truth of all those dark nights when I stayed up working while he slept soundly. Saturday afternoon arrived. I knew very well that Mark was hosting his family and some close friends at the house that afternoon. He was going to use the gathering to trash talk me, spin his fabricated sob story, and gather all their sympathy. I found out about this from a text message his own brother sent, accidentally adding me to their family group chat, and then immediately removing me when he realized his mistake. But by then, I had already read the message and taken a screenshot. It was exactly 2:00 in the afternoon when I casually pulled my car right in front of my own house. There were a lot of cars parked outside that I recognized. The weather was completely clear today, and the sun was shining bright, almost as if something new was about to begin. The sounds of people laughing loudly and chatting spilled all the way out to the street. I could smell the familiar scent of meat roasting on the backyard grill. I took a very deep breath, gripped that heavy blue file tightly in my hand, and stepped out of the car. I did not have the key to my own home, so I casually rang the doorbell. Suddenly, in a split second, a dead silence fell over the inside of the house. I knew Mark had told them all that I would probably never come back, or that I had moved away to another big city for good. Mark opened the door himself, probably expecting a late guest. Seeing me standing right there in front of him, the color completely drained from his face. His fake smile vanished into thin air. For a few seconds, he could not even process what to say or how to react. He probably expected me to arrive crying, or maybe never arrive at all. I gave him zero time to think. I brushed past his shoulder and walked straight into the living room without saying a word. Sitting in the living room were his parents, his two closest friends, his younger sister, and his Aunt Sarah. Beer bottles, chips, and a few sandwiches were laid out on the glass center table. They were all staring at me as if they had literally seen a ghost. Mark stumbled in frantically right behind me. He stammered out, "Claire, what are you doing here? You said you absolutely did not want to be in this relationship anymore, and you just wanted to focus on your career? Please do not make a scene here." I looked at him very calmly, and I felt absolutely no anger towards him. I honestly felt an overwhelming amount of pity for him. He looked so incredibly weak, scared and small in the fake, hollow world he had built for himself. I did not yell or scream. I did not create any unnecessary drama. I walked peacefully over to the glass center table and slammed that thick, evidence-filled blue file right down on it. The sound of the file hitting the table was soft, but in the dead silence of that crowded room, it sounded as terrifying as a bomb going off. I looked at every single person sitting in that room, one by one, and in a very quiet but rock-solid voice, I said, "I know perfectly well what Mark has told all of you about me. He told you that I left this house on my own free will for my career and money. He wrote that exact same lie to the world on social media. But the entire truth is, last Tuesday, while I was commuting home from my office in the pouring rain, Mark changed all the locks on this house and threw my belongings out into the rain, just so he could invent this fake story and steal my house." Mark immediately panicked and interrupted, saying, "She is lying. She has gone crazy. Mom, Dad, absolutely do not listen to a word she says. She has always been like this." I let him finish, and then I opened my blue file. I pulled out the very first page and laid it on the table in front of everyone. I said, "These are the original title documents for this house. They have only my name on them. I paid the entire $35,000 down payment out of my own pocket. This second page is a bank statement spanning 6 years, clearly showing that on the first of every single month, the $2,200 mortgage comes directly out of my account. I even pay the loan on your new car." Mark's parents were staring at those papers in total, unblinking silence. The room was so terrifyingly quiet you could hear a small pin drop on the floor. I slowly pulled out the next page. I said, "And this is the exact, complete accounting of the money Mark has been slowly stealing from my joint account over the last 3 months, just so he could stay in expensive hotels with his new 25-year-old girlfriend, Chloe." I also placed the color printouts of all those text chats right on the table, the ones where Chloe was shamelessly discussing throwing out the old furniture in this very living room to put in new ones. Mark's entire face was drenched in sweat. He was trying to offer some kind of explanation, but no clear words were coming out of his mouth. His father picked up those papers with shaking hands and started reading them carefully. Mark's mother had lowered her eyes in absolute shame, covering her face with both her hands. They fully understood now what a massive liar, fraud, and cheater their own son was. His Aunt Sarah, who just yesterday was calling me greedy and selfish on social media, was now sitting frozen like a stone statue. I pulled out the very last page of my file. It was a very strict legal notice, meticulously drafted by my lawyer. I slid that notice straight across to Mark and said, "This is a legal eviction notice. Because this house is completely, legally mine, and you are now living here illegally without my permission. I also filed a police report this very morning stating that you illegally locked me out of my own home. You have exactly 2 hours to pack all of your belongings and leave this house forever. If I see you here in exactly 2 hours, I will call the cops, and you will be forcibly dragged out and humiliated in front of everyone. Mark looked up at me. I could see pure fear in his eyes now. He was watching the good guy image he had so carefully curated for his family shatter into a million pieces. He started begging me to talk in private. He said, "Claire, please do not do this. We can sit down and talk about this calmly. I will fix everything. It was a huge mistake on my part. Just give me a chance." But once a bridge of trust collapses, you can never fill those deep cracks with hollow and fake words. I picked my bag back up and turned toward the door. I looked back at all of them one last time and said, "I gave the 7 best years of my life to a man who took my kindness and my hard work as my biggest weakness. I paid all his bills, carried all his responsibilities, and in return, he tried to throw me out on the street. From today onward, I will never give anyone the right to make decisions about my life or my money. This is my house, and there is no room for lies in this house anymore." I walked outside and got into my car. As I was leaving the house, I could clearly hear a very loud and bitter argument erupting between Mark and his father. His dad was shouting at the top of his lungs, "You kept us in the dark and lied to us for years. You have hung our heads in shame." Exactly 1 hour and 45 minutes later, a furious Mark walked out carrying a few heavy bags. His family had already left in their cars, entirely consumed by shame, without making eye contact with me even once. Mark looked at my car as he left, but I absolutely refused to roll down my window. He got into his car and drove away forever. I called a locksmith that very day, that very hour, and had every single lock in the entire house changed again, permanently. When that locksmith installed the new lock and handed me that fresh key, the sound of that key turning in the lock was the most beautiful, comforting sound in the world to me. That sound was not just a lock clicking, it was the sound of my freedom, the sound of my brand new life. The next few months after that were incredibly difficult. Legal proceedings, running back and forth to lawyers, the long drawn-out divorce process, and fighting to escape those bitter memories that lived in every room and every corner of that house. Mark shamelessly tried very hard to claim a piece of the house in court, but against my solid evidence, my blue file, and my lawyer's arguments, he did not stand a chance. He had to walk away completely empty-handed. Sometime later, I sold that house because I did not want to suffocate between the walls where such a massive and dirty betrayal had happened behind my back. I bought a beautiful new apartment right in the heart of the city. It was a bit smaller than the old one, but it was solely and entirely mine. Every single thing there, every painting, every piece of furniture, was bought with my own hard work, and most importantly, I was the only one who had the key to that lock. There was no one there who would steal my own things behind my back, or betray me. When you always go out of your way to take care of others, treating their every little need as your own responsibility, people often forget that you are a human being too, and that you also need support sometimes. People start treating your kindness and your love as your duty and your weakness. I paid a massive price to learn that love does not mean completely erasing yourself, or spending your entire life paying the bill for someone else's share. True love is a place where you do not have to put your entire life and hard-earned money on the line just to prove your worth. Today, I am incredibly happy. I have this strange, wonderful peace, and I no longer have to carry the heavy burden of someone else's fake and hollow dreams on my shoulders. I have learned to become the author of my own story. If you have ever felt in your own life that your kindness and your innocence were taken advantage of, that someone else took all the credit for your hard work, or if you ever gathered the courage to walk away from a toxic relationship that was eating you alive from the inside like termites, please let me know down in the comments below. I read every single one of your experiences because somewhere, Somehow, we are all fighting the exact same battles in our lives. If this story felt real to you and gave you a little bit of courage for yourself, then like this video. And absolutely do not forget to subscribe to BookBite Studio for more true, deep, and life-changing stories, just like this one. We will meet again very soon with a new and empowering story. Always take care of yourself, and always remember your worth.